welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is an alternative viewpoint and trying to make sense of the world. Now this is part 5, and what I would like to talk about is the call it NATO and the military-industrial complex. Now NATO was established after the Second World War, when the Cold War started, and it was opposed by the Warsaw Pact. And these were basically defensive alliances, which means that if anybody of these members of these alliances is attacked, then the remainder will basically come to its aid, and that will basically start the Second or the Third World War. And everything worked fine, and that's hunky-dory. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, then the Warsaw Pact collapsed, and effectively the NATO, reason for NATO ceased to exist. Well, that is the narrative that is usually being provided. But one doesn't have to see it like that, and I actually discussed it. It is still an alliance, and it's still a defensive alliance, which is like effectively like a preventative. No, if you erect a barrier, if you show your teeth like a dog, it's a warning. You can use NATO as a warning system in order not to be attacked. So, and then NATO expanded to the east and took a couple of old Warsaw Pact countries into their fold. And one has to ask you the reasons why did they want to do it. Yes, there was a stupid thing like they needed soldiers. I'm not even gonna go there. The point here is that the original NATO were established countries which focus mostly on development and industrial prosperity for their people. They didn't spend a lot of money on defense. That was the job of the Americans, because the Americans wanted it. America had a lot more to do in terms of policing the whole world in order to protect their interest and support their US reserve currency, and to ensure that the rest of the world are financially colonized in order to subsidize the living standards in America via the American dollar. And for that, they had to go everywhere in the world. And for that, they needed a huge army, and the army was not limited to Europe itself. Therefore, America acted outside the framework of NATO. But they had to spend a lot of money, and they did use a lot of spend. Well, they did create a huge army, but that was financed by the world. Because as they were delivering or sending goods, say China to America, they got dollars back, but they couldn't use the dollars because what are they going to buy? So what they buy is they either bought US treasuries or invested on a stock exchange, or lately bought some physical assets in America. But by buying American treasury bonds, they were actually financing the debt of America, which America used to finance its military itself. So that system worked indirectly. It's like, I'm financing your military so that you can destroy me. That's very good policy. But in any case. But Europe didn't take part in that, and they didn't spend a lot of money on the military. And that is why you find that most of their stock, military stock that they had to send to Ukraine, is either now depleted or they can't supply. And if they wanted to supply, they have to supply the modern weapons, of which very few they have. In fact, Germany is going to manufacture some 155 artillery, self-propelled artillery, wheel-driven, not track-driven, wheel-driven. And they're going to manufacture it first now. And even the German army doesn't even have it. It's going to be the first export of this product. Actually, the first production of this 155 self-driven artillery piece. They sent the first Iris air defense system to Ukraine, which they didn't even have. So as you can see, the military in Europe is very limited. But the Americans still have very old stock and so on. And, well, that is what has now happened basically is that the smaller Warsaw Pact, like Lithuania, Estonia, which don't have many soldiers or money or anything, and that's basically the tail of the dog is now wagging the dog, which is the old Western countries. And the old Western countries don't want to make war because life is good, but the life in these countries is not that good, so they're still very aggressive and warlike, and that's why you will find that those are the countries that still support the Ukrainians, much more than what the traditional Western countries have done. But in any case, so NATO still wants to have a reason for existence, because that means they can prevent they can have a little bit more leeway in doing things in the world without the fear of anybody attacking them, because then that country might think that NATO, the other members of NATO will help them. And that is why the wars in Iraq were allowed, Afghanistan was allowed, Libya was allowed, Syria more or less. But now Russia has reached a point of military, a certain level, that it can challenge NATO. And China is very quickly on its way to that same point, if they are not yet there. So now NATO has a role again to play, or it thinks it has a role to play, and that's why it thinks that it doesn't want to get really involved, because the traditional NATO countries are still way too having, like I said, a good lifestyle. But the other tail ends, the new underdeveloped countries, still wants to fight Ukraine, the Russians. And they hate the Russians. And that creates a problem. How do NATO engage in Ukraine without becoming self-entangled in the fight? Well, luckily, the Russians also don't want to start World War III. So they will do everything possible not to escalate it. But at some point, it will escalate. And the Russians are already preparing for that possibility. You can see it by the modernization of the nuclear forces, the missiles, the production of the missiles to replace it, the upgrading of the aviation, the long-range bombers with the nuclear warheads, the submarines that have nuclear loads. So they're already activating the nuclear forces, and they're on standby. So they're preparing for that. And another thing that they have done is they have now sent troops to Belarus in order to train together, so that should there be an invasion from Poland or any other reason, then the Belarusians are prepared for that. And they all integrate into the Russian military. And they send the S-400s to that. And they send a lot of tanks and self-propelled artillery pieces there. So they are preparing for the possibility should NATO step over the line. But we can see, like I always said, the Chinese have said, salami politics. They think, America thinks you can slowly increase it. But if you have also seen, the first Patriot system was sent, not that it will make a big difference, but like I said previously, that's only the taste, the icebreaker. Now the Bradley fighting vehicles are coming, and soon the Abrams tanks will follow. And that is a totally different ball game. And I showed you about the M109, the self-propelled, and how many of America has of these units. So, and I read an article about the commander of Ukraine that says he finally is he's starting to understand the politics around these weapons. He now knows how to handle the Americans. He will demand a little bit more, small increments he will demand until he gets what he gets. And that he has shown being successful. Because they have gotten the NASAMS, they've gotten the Iris, they've gotten the Patriots now, they're going to get the Bradley fighting wheels, they're going to get it from Germany, they're going to get it from France. One of these days the tanks are there. And after that, it's going to be the F-16s. And then we're going to have some very seriously dangerous situations. Well, the fourth party that I think, or the third party that I think in America is pushing it, but that's a military-industrial complex. Now, there's always talk about this. Yes, it says very powerful, but I don't think that in this case, the military-industrial complex is has such a big influence, because you can see they want to manufacture high-end values or high expensive armament, but they are not geared for mass production. They are not geared for a wartime type of manufacturing industry. And they haven't shown any indication that they are willing to do it unless the American government will commit to that. There's no talk of that. So it's not that the military-industrial complex in America wants to produce a lot of weapons and ammunition. Neither in America and neither in Europe. They're sending all their old stockpiles of weapons that have long expired, and that gives them enough reason to replace these weapons with new modern systems. It's just a money laundering excuse for ordering weapons. That's all that is. So don't be confused that they going to manufacture and send this huge amount of volume to Ukraine. That's not what they are planning at this stage. So, in my opinion, maybe 5% of the effort or drive. So it's actually the fourth group. Maybe 5% has an influence. If I really think the first one is the collapse due to the debt. That together with the idea that they have to maintain that the world subsidized the American dollar and thereby the lifestyle. That means the American global reserve currency status must be maintained. Like I said, those things are about 60 to 70%. Then you have the hawkish people and the right wing and the old people. That will be probably another 20%. And then we have a little bit of these middle industrial, but that doesn't sign anything. But in the next part, we're going to get to the fifth group that I believe has an influence in the current situation. So, this is the story for today. If you like what you heard, press the like button, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word, ring the bell button, and until next time, cheers.